This is the Perfect RIA, in case you didn't know. Bringing you all the strategies to help your business grow. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Sit back and listen in while you feel the beat, yeah!
So if you don't use a value sledgehammer with your clients, do you add any value?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I'm your co-host, Matthew Jarvis, calling in live from Las Vegas, and with me, the man, the myth, the legend, Micah Shalansky from Hawaii.
Aloha. Jarvis, what's going on, bud?
Micah, just living the dream. I'm fired up for today's episode. I enjoy all the episodes we do, which is one of our rules. One of our very first things when we got together and started the Perfect RIA, we said, hey, solve for joy. As soon as we're not having fun, we're going to stop doing it. And so all these episodes are fun, but this one today I'm especially excited for.
Yeah, I really love when we start talking about things that are one, really important in the industry, but also where people miss it. Now, just to be very fair, I have missed things my entire industry. I'm sure there's things I'm looking at right now that I'm completely missing it. So this is where we love positive feedback, right? And great constructive criticism. Not the trolls out there, but the constructive criticism is just fantastic. To come in and say, hey, have we thought about this? Have we thought about doing things a certain way? And one of the reasons that we have set this up and to be really transparent about our practice, about how we deliver value, how we do surge meetings, how we do fee increases, how we do all of these things across the board, is to open up that transparency that's there. But you're still going to have some people come back that say, hey, does this really help a client? That's why one of our main tenets is it must deliver massive value. Now, we can have all kinds of discussion about what is delivering value. How do you define if it's massive or not? Happy to get into that, but that's the premise we want to go in. And Jarvis, I kind of look at this as a bit of a premise, like in my office or in my relationship with my wife. Well, one of the things that I always do is I assume positive intent, right? Sometimes I say something doesn't come off the right way. I love that my wife is always assuming positive intent. Give me an opportunity to rephrase some things, right? So I always want to assume some positive intent. And when I lead with delivering massive value into my mind, I'm always taking the default assumption that whatever I'm doing, I'm engaging in value to my client. But some people say, Jarvis, there's too much value. Have you seen that?
Yes, there was recently an article that talked about, they even used the expression, the value sledgehammer, that sometimes advisors are so obsessed with delivering value that they hit clients over the head with this value sledgehammer and the idea that it's a bad thing. Now, I have two thoughts on this. One is that somebody grossly misunderstood what value is. They confuse noise or volume or whatever with value. The other is it's impossible to deliver too much value. Like I'm just trying to think of a scenario where I'm thinking like, hey, listen, Mr. Professional, if you would quit paying me so much money, like that'd be like me going down to the bank and be like, you know what, you're paying me too much in interest, turn it back down.
This is like that song, right? I want to say it was Kenny Chesney, but I have no idea whose song it was. There's no such thing, right? There's, a car too fast, a girl too pretty, too much money, right? There ain't no such thing as too much fun. There's not no such thing as too much value. Now, you could have failed to deliver the value correctly, right? You could be doing a lot of fantastic stuff and failed to deliver it correctly. Okay, there's too much of potentially that going on, but too much value? I just haven't seen that. So yeah, I would love to know what is too much value. And I have never in my life gone back to a professional that says you've toned up too much value. Now, my wife has multiple times come up to me because we work with certain people, says, hey, I think we should increase what we're paying them because they're doing such a good job. I said, you know what? I really appreciate you telling me this. Great news. Pay is under my area of responsibility. So I will take care of that conversation. But yeah, it's one of those things, right? That I've gotten lots of value from people before, but I've never gone to them and said, this is too much value. You should do less for me.
Yeah, I mean, really, as a rule, and our friend Benjamin Brandt, he talks about this when trying to capture emails. He wants his email capture, what's known as a lead magnet, to be so valuable that the person says, I'd be an idiot to not do this. Russell Brunson, the creator of ClickFunnels, same thing. He says, man, I want to stack on so much value and so many bonuses. These people are thinking that I'm crazy. Why would they not give me their email address? So, Mike, I think where this idea of the value sledgehammer comes is a misunderstanding.
It's from people that don't have clients?
Oh, sorry. There's that too. It's a misunderstanding of what value really is.
Yes.
So if I'm calling a client every single day and I'm telling them, hey, guess what the market did today? That's not value. That's not value. And so what we don't have, it's not a value sledgehammer. It's like you were just beating them over the head just to beat them over the head.
I got this. I'm glad you brought up that example because I got that from someone who was reviewing our office from a practice management standpoint. And that's one of the things that they suggested was saying, hey, every week you need to pick X amount of clients and you just need to call them. I was like, well, fantastic. What am I going to call him about? He says, well, call him. Let him know you're thinking about him. I was like, I'm going to call an executive and let them know I was thinking about him.
Waste their time.
How you think that's going to go? Because when I get that phone call, I am not super impressed. Now, if it's a long-term friend, we haven't chatted in a little while, and they're calling me out of blue to say, hey, I hope you're doing well, and then want to chat from a friend, totally get that. If the attorney called me out of the blue and said, hey, I was just thinking about you, I was like, crap, what are you, low on billable hours? Like, why are you calling me for this, right? That is not a good use of time. And so it's not just about the number of reaches, the number of contacts that you make. Yes, that helps, but they must be positive contacts. It must be, there's no reason why I wouldn't pick up the phone. When we call my clients and it comes up as Shalansky and Associates, which for a while it was coming up as Shalansky and just the first three letters of Associates.
Oh, that's right. I remember.
Yeah,
I remember seeing that. I screenshotted that a few times.
So we had to fix that one. All right. But when it comes up as Shalansky and Associates, I want our clients so excited to pick up the phone because they know no matter what it is, no matter who's calling, we are there to deliver value and to help them. They're not clicking us and sending us to voicemail because it's just another call.
Yeah. Now that call could be, so let's see what that call could be that would be valuable, right? That call could be, hey, I just wanted to let you know that with this new tax laws, there's been a change on your inherited IRA. And so when you see headlines on that, know that we've got that taken care of, and we're going to talk about it in March, but there's not anything you need to do between now and our surge meetings. So that could be a proactive call, though admittedly, that's maybe like once a quarter, once every 6 months, you're making a call like that. Because again, I don't want to waste anybody's time. Micah, to your point, there are professionals I've worked with where I stop taking their calls. I don't want to hear from them. I don't want another update that they haven't taken care of my stuff. I want to know when they call, I want to know because it's like, oh, you've got something important that I want to take care of.
You know, and then there's a difference between a phone call and an email, right?
We talked about that just a few weeks ago.
That's right. This is one of the things I'll tell my clients all the time when we're setting up our rules for communication. And I explained to them that email is just mail, right? And I give the example about running down to the post office and ripping up every package and writing a letter immediately back. And they all laugh. They're like, no, we would never do this. I'm like, great. Email is the exact same thing. So if there's something really important you need my response to the same day, I need you to pick up the phone and call. And oh, by the way, we're going to treat this the same thing. If it's a general update, we're happy to shoot you an email that you can get to at your leisure. If this is something very urgent, we're going to call you because we need to make sure we're taking care of this. So I want to respect that communication boundary with the client. And dare I say, that adds value, right? That's what I'm looking for in the client's life. I want to set this up for success.
Oh, completely. And I think we also get confused on value, or advisors get confused on value from the opposite end of the spectrum. Things that on the surface could seem like it only benefits the advisor. Micah, you and I have been criticized for saying, hey, listen, surge meeting is only just for your vacation schedule. No, not at all. Surge meeting is to make sure that I am serving clients in the most efficient and effective manner possible. Does that also include my ability to take time with my family? Yes. And does that make me a better advisor? Indeed, it does. And so multiple things can be true at a time, but you and I each created Surge independently for the explicit purpose of better serving clients. Yes, it has benefits that we can run the Perfect RIA, that we can take time with our family, that we can run our practices. Right. But again, at the end of the day, I feel like I'm on my soapbox here. You and I are doing more productive work when we come into the office for a day than most advisors are doing in a week and even in a month. We're just saying, instead of playing office, we're going to deliver all our value as fast and as efficiently as we possibly can. And then we're going to move on to other value producing activities. Me staring at the computer, reading the Wall Street Journal, not a value producing activity.
No, not at all. Actually, my son, Gabriel, asked me the other day, Jarvis, he goes, so you have value adds and you have delivering massive value. He's like, and I understand what a value add is, but what qualifies as a value add? I was like, that's a good question, right? Kind of where does it kind of fit into this realm? And I kind of feel it comes in this value smackdown value conversation that's right here, which is saying when we're delivering value, this isn't a 100% rule, but it's a good 80% rule, right? Number one, it must be unique to the client. Now, that does not mean everything has to be fully customizable for the client. Let's take
you did not handwrite the entire thing. Yeah,
or rewrite it every single time for every single client, right? Let's take the inherited IRA rule, right? Everyone who had an inherited IRA got an email from us that says, hey, great news. The rules have changed with inherited IRAs. Great news. We're on top of it. There's no action you need to take right now. That is something we're going to be talking about in our upcoming meeting, right? And so that was unique to every client because I took it and sent it to clients that had inherited IRAs. right? If clients didn't have inherited IRAs, maybe it wasn't as pressing. Now, we sent them an email about the Secure Act. This is, hey, great news. We're reading the Secure Act. We're on top of it. There's no changes you need to make right now, but this is something that we're going to bring up in our planning meeting in March and April when you come in. If you have any questions sooner to that, you're welcome to give our office a call, right? So this value add can be sent out to them that's unique to them, that has something that they may be dealing with or a question they may have, and gives them what their action item is. Now, you could just say, Michael, in those two examples, there's no action item. That was the action item. The action item was, great news. There's nothing you need to do right now to take care of this. Now, you could be looking at saying, that's not helpful whatsoever. Well, I'm going to push back on that, because how many times have our clients gotten letters from the IRS and they read the letter? They're like, what does this mean? Like, what do I do? Like, there's clearly some ones that are balanced too that say you owed money. Then other times, this happens to my wife. Sometimes we'll just get a love letter from the IRS just confirming something. And she's like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do with this letter. And you look at it and like, oh, well, there's no action required. But it doesn't say that. And so my wife is left pondering about, oh, great, we just got a letter from the IRS. What the heck does this friggin' thing mean? And this just means absolutely nothing. So in your communication, I'm sorry, on this huge soapbox, but in your communication, it has to be clear. What does the client need to do? And if they don't need to do anything, fantastic. Let them know.
Yeah, no, here's another mistake, Micah, that we make as advisors, and I have to catch myself on this sometimes too. Even to this day, we had a small thing come up in the office where I noticed this was going on, is sending information to clients that's not applicable to them. So let's stay on the Secure 2.0 thing. If I'm sending them if I'm sending a generic thing about inherited IRAs to all my clients, and only 7 of them have inherited IRAs, now what I've created is a situation where the client says, all right, whatever I get from Jarvis's office, I have to filter that. To decide if that's valuable to me or not.
Yep.
Same would be if you send them, like, here's a 47 points of things from the Secure Act 2.0. No, that's not value. Now, what would be value is to say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, there's 47 planning items that came out of Secure Act, and there are these 2 we're going to discuss with you during our meeting, right? We're going to discuss whatever those 2 are relevant to them. You're not going to have a thing about 529 accounts if they don't have any children or grandchildren. They're just, they're a single person. That would be a waste of time. So again, value is not noise. Value is almost the opposite of noise. I'm being super specific. And back to your question that Gabe had, it has to be personalized, actionable advice. Personalized, actionable advice is value. Most everything outside of that is not value.
That's really the key that's right there. Now, someone's going to ask the question, well, my clients could have a grandson and they may be interested in a 529 for their grandson. That is theoretically possible, and I'm sure we've run across that realistically in all of our practices. That doesn't mean for every client in 65 that has grandchildren, I'm sending 529 information to. That's not valuable in that particular case. So again, this is a solid 80-85% rule. This is not a 100% thing. This is the first lens that I'm going to look through and value. And it's the lens I want to push back on my team, because Jarvis, we discovered not too long ago that our team was really committed to this value add. And so they were calling clients when there was no action and nothing needed to be done. But they felt like, yeah, exactly. You just cringed. Exactly, right? But they were like, hey, I got to deliver value. This thing's kind of been out here. I want to call and make sure I do a follow-up. So the great news, they had the spirit of wanting to call and do things, but we had to kind of relook at our policy, say, hey, look, why are we reaching out? If we're reaching out for the no reason whatsoever, that's really not a good thing. Now, if there's something big pending, we don't have an update for him, we're waiting on an attorney, and we told him we'd get back to him at a certain period of time, okay, that's a reason to reach out. But we don't just call for the sake of calling. We got to call for a good reason. We are the filter. We are the screen for our clients.
Another area where this comes up is in personal development and knowledge, right? So you and I are huge advocates of personal development, right? We spent, you and I were doing the math between the 2 of us. We spent a very sizable 6-figure sum on personal development last year, which is, by the way, pretty normal for us. But at the same point, so we have all this knowledge, but it has to be applicable. So again, we were talking about Secure Act. If I sit down with a client and I want to flex my knowledge and recite to them the 47 points of the Secure Act, that's not value. But for me to sit down and to be able to pick out, oh, they do have a grandson and they might be an example of this new 529 to Roth thing, let me explain it to them in crayon. So really my ability to explain things in crayon, which is not meant with disrespect to clients, that is massive value. Me spending an hour lecturing them on the nuances of Secure Act, that is not value.
So let's take it out of the financial planning world for a quick second. And sometimes, I don't know, this just works for me. When I take it out of financial planning, I can see it in other professionals. It's a splinter and plank thing, right? So we're selling our condo right now because we built our house. And so we're selling our condo in Anchorage. And the buyer wanted to move in early. Well, it's fantastic, but they want to move in while we're in Maui. So it's slightly problematic. I'm not there to wrap up a couple things. So we led with a yes. We let them know, hey, we'd be happy to move up the sale date. We are in Maui, so we're going to need you to handle a couple things. And the buyer was like, not a problem. So the title company said, hey, we need some original document signed. So they FedExed us original documents. We found the notary. The notary came over. I'm looking at the documents, and we're missing several key documents, as in, what are the costs, right? How much money am I going? Where's my money going, right? All of these kind of key things. And basically all I have is a document that says, I've sold my unit to this other person. I've sold my condo to this other person. So I call up the title company, and I'm like, hey, I see the purchase agreement that's here. I see the warranty deed that's taking place. However, I'm not seeing where my money's going from the sale of this. They're like, oh, well, we haven't quite figured that out yet. Just sign these and send it back. And then later, I'll get you those documents. And I said, you know
later when your money has disappeared. Yes, go ahead.
Correct. Exactly right. I was like, so sorry. That really doesn't work for me. She's like, I don't see what the big deal is. So quickly in that conversation, that was not going anywhere. So I hung up the phone with her, called her real estate agent, and I said, hey, I'm not comfortable signing these documents because I'm selling my condo and it doesn't tell me where I'm getting my money. And my real estate agent, brilliant sales lady, she comes back. She goes, Micah, I fully agree. If you're not comfortable, don't sign the documents. I wasn't going to sign them anyways. And so she led with the aspect of saying she was agreeing with me. She led with the yes. If you're not comfortable, don't sign them. Let's talk about this, right? But she immediately put my concerns at ease because this wasn't a combative situation. And she was like, I fully agree. You should not sign until you have all the documents. Let's find out where those other documents are. She brought in her associate. She brought him up to speed real fast on what was going on. And then when the call wrapped up, she goes, Mike, I just want to remind you a couple of things. Our associate, she was able to get the buyers to agree on blah, 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 which saved you over $5,000 in costs. And the associate was like, oh, yes, and we got the appraisal waived, which clearly just means we didn't sell it for enough. But anyways, we got the appraisal waived, and that saved you another $1,000, right? So they're implementing the dishwasher rule right there. So there's in a span of 10 minutes, there's two different conversations with one professionals, one that could care less about the documents when I sign them, when it happens, and one that listened to me and could clearly explain the value in the conversation. And guess who I'm passionate about helping out in the future? And guess which one I never want to talk to again.
Totally. Now this is a whole other thing that we can go on to, which is you can never, ever, ever be dismissive of something that the client brings up, even if it's the most outlandish thing. Even if the client says, you know what, Jarvis, I like to do, I'm going to sell all of our equities that are down and we want to buy 2x leverage crypto because I think FTX is going to come back. If I'm dismissive, if I laugh out loud and say, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life, I have just destroyed that relationship, even if it is the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. But instead, again, they're coming to me as a trusted advisor. If I get in that adversarial role, if I'm telling them, hey, this isn't a big deal, I'm now dismissive of that. So instead, I want to be really empathetic, right? And we've talked about this before. Oddly enough, we talked about it on buying timeshares one time, Micah, you and I did. But I want to acknowledge that, like, that's an interesting plan. Like, tell me more about that. Or I can always ask someone to tell me more with all authenticity. I'm not pandering to it. I'm not saying, well, that could actually be a great idea. Tell me more. Tell me how that would work out. Tell me where you learned about that idea, right? So value, again, is having this really strong relationship with the client.
I love it. All right. So some other misconceptions, I think, about value that are absolutely there. One is being profitable. So Jarvis' question is, you, Jarvis Financial, Matthew Jarvis, being profitable and making money, does that add value to your clients? Yes or no?
Yes, it adds immense value. Because let's take this to the hyperbolous extreme. If I go out of business, that's not helping clients. If I'm going into the office each day, and I remember years when it was this way, if I'm going to the office each day thinking, shoot, how am I going to make payroll next week? That does not put me in a good position to be a financial advisor. Now, this is not to say that in the startup years, you don't have those grind times where, Micah, you and I both had them, where do I have another credit card I can max out to keep this thing floating? That exists. But if that exists because you're not charging appropriate fees, we have an enormous problem here. Or because you're running an unprofitable model, we've got an enormous problem that is not value.
Yeah, you're not charging your clients because you don't feel that they can pay the fee, right? Okay, you're bringing on the wrong clients. Like all of these things, this, and when I say this, people often hear it the wrong way. This is a business decision. That does not mean it's not personal. Business is highly personal. We're dealing with individuals. We're dealing with heartbeats. We're dealing with real things right here. But at the end of the day, your clients would not go to work for somebody and not make money. Why would you?
Yeah, totally. A couple other things that come to mind that are dismissive, where people misunderstand delivering massive value. The dishwasher rule, Micah, you mentioned this with your realtor. From time to time, including just recently, we had somebody say, well, the dishwasher is stupid because of, and then usually I always love to pull everyone's ADVs, right? My next thing I do anytime somebody dismisses the dishwasher rule is I love to just do some personal searching on them to discover that they're divorced or in some other estranged relationship. So then I think, okay, I'm not sure I'm going to take marital relationship advice from you, but let's look at the dishwasher rule. You could look at it from the angle and say, hey, this is narcissistic. You're trying to get a parade show here. And I suppose you could take it to some kind of extreme like that. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is massive value is having a strong relationship where it's very clear to me what I'm getting out of the relationship. And part of that is for me to make it very clear to the other person what I'm providing to the relationship. If only, Micah, because my bill is always very clear. They're seeing in black and white, dollars and cents, this is what it cost me to work with Jarvis. I want it to be equally clear to them, this is what I'm getting for that cost.
Yeah, and I want to pull out something you just said right there as well, that narcissistic behavior that we could easily have. If you're walking in this relationship, any relationship, whether it's a friend, whether it's your marriage, whether it's a client relationship, with the only thought is, what do I get the most out of this? How does it benefit me the most inside of here? Boy, you are not delivering value. You got some serious issues you got to work out, right? This is about you helping somebody else. Now, that needs to reciprocate in the business side. You're getting hired, etc. And I was just going through this with an advisor last week, Jarvis, is walking through his prospect process. And one of the things I was like, hey, in the first 15 minutes of meeting with me, any prospect, my sole goal is to deliver more value than they've ever got from anyone else. I don't care if they hire me or not. And that is, I mean, that's from my heart of hearts. Before, when I did care, things didn't go very well, right? Because I was too focused on me and the relationship. I wasn't focused on the client. I wasn't focused on delivering value. The more I push and say, I'm going to deliver as much value as I possibly can, the more I'm going to help you. Hire me or not, go do these things. Hire me or not, this is how to set things up to better suit you for retirement, to help achieve your goals, to help you out in these different areas. Man, everything is just better. The world's just a better place with that side. And more often than not, people want to hire me because we're delivering so much value. If I just sat up there and said, great, here's my fee structure, you got to pay this before we get moving forward. Well, that's how a lot of attorneys work. And how great do you feel when you get done meeting with your attorney?
No, a great book on that, other than my book, Delivering Massive Value, a great book on that is What's in It for Them by Joe Polish. What's in it for them?
That's right.
And Mike, I see this theme constantly throughout, right? Advisors will reach out, or people reach out to the Perfect RIA podcast and say, hey, I want to be on your show because I want to talk about the things that I want to talk about. Wait a second. I got to be honest. I really don't care what you want, but you haven't led with any value for me. You've not demonstrated at all why it would be beneficial for me and for my audience to have you on our audience, to have you on the show. So watch your language. Anytime your language is starting with I, you're probably making a mistake. You're going in there focused on what it is that you want and you need. Contrast that, Micah, to what you said. When a client sits down or a prospect sits down and you're saying, listen, whether you work with me or not, please make sure you take care of these three things. Please make sure whoever you hire takes care of these things for you. That's me starting with what's in it for them. And then it always reciprocates back.
Yeah. So pro tip then, in case you didn't pick up on that, if you want to be on the podcast, start with how it's going to benefit our listeners. Right?
Yeah.
If it's going to benefit our listeners, it's going to benefit financial planning community, etc. Man, we'd be excited to chat with you and go through it. If you just have a product to push and that's what you want to talk about, probably not going to make it through the screening process.
Yeah, probably not. By probably not, I mean certainly not. Micah, anything else that comes to mind with you for this before we transition to action items? This idea of this value sledgehammer that you can in fact deliver too much value. My mind is just racked by this. But though when we say the value sledgehammer, I do think of Thor's hammer.
Yes.
And so I do want to get a Thor hammer that I'm going to start carrying that to conferences. It's going to say the value sledgehammer.
Yes,
I'm going to start carrying Thor's hammer around. But that's almost how I want to live my life.
Fantastic. I never wanted a tattoo until now.
I want to live my life with a value sledgehammer, right? Not in the, somebody was using it as a derogative thing. I want to use it like everywhere I go. People are like, holy smokes, Jarvis is here with the value sledgehammer. I'm so glad he's here. Not because he's a great guy, that's an iffy thing, but because I know that he's going to make this thing a better place. And so, I guess the value sledgehammer was used as a negative, but I think we're going to repurpose it as a positive. Bring the value hammer of Thor.
That's right. Dun, dun, dun. So in this, it goes beyond financial planning, right? This needs to be in the aspect with your relationship with your wife, with your children, right? With all of these things, how are you adding value to them and not just about you? That's going to be there. When you're involved in a charity, how are you adding value to that charity? How are you adding value to our community, right? What's that quote? Ask not what the government can do for you, but what you can do, or what the country can do for you, but what you can do for the country, right? That same concept right here. What can you do to make things a better place? Let's spin this sucker on the head and use that value sledgehammer. Let's do it. Yeah.
And charge accordingly. We'll do another rant on charging accordingly. You're going to deliver massive value. You're going to charge accordingly. So
Amen.
Action items. I would say, Micah, action item number one, this is something that you and I are always passionate about.
Oh, sorry.
Get
what?
Thor's hammer. Yes. That's Zach, my assistant, if you're listening, please get me Thor's hammer. Make sure it's bigger than Micah's copy of Thor's hammer. I'm going to have a cart. I'm going to be dragging this in. Mine's going to be bigger. action item number 2, besides get Jarvis Thor's hammer, bigger than Micah's Thor hammer, action item number 2 is ignore anyone who doesn't have the practice you want. Including, yes, Micah, by the way, you and I. If you say, 100%. Like, the practice that Jarvis and Micah have, I don't want a lifestyle practice. I want to work 90 hours a week until I die at my desk. Whatever it is you want, I don't know. Only listen to people who have the practice that you want. And when you find those people, then ask them, hey, how are you doing Thor's value sledgehammer? Like, what is it you're doing? How can I learn from that?
You know, one of the other questions I like to ask advisors is, what are they doing right now? Sometimes, and I'll find guilty of this as well, is, hey, Micah, when you first started your practice, how'd you set this up? Now I'm going down memory lane, and hopefully I have an accurate memory of what I did, but it's often going to be painted a little bit more rosy than what actually took place. So I always love the question with advisors.
Nostalgia.
Great. Yeah, nostalgia kicks in. I always love that. What are you doing right now that's adding value to your clients? And can you walk me through that? And can they walk you through the process of how that's delivering value and how their clients are receiving it, et cetera? So don't be afraid to ask the now question. And I push on advisors a little bit when they say this. Great. Is this something you would like to do, or is this something you've implemented? Something I implemented. Fantastic. What does it look like, right? If you've implemented it, you should be able to answer most of these questions.
You know, a great version of this question, I take this to every time I go to a conference, including when I go to the TPR and RTS summits at the end of September. I love to come with a question I'm going to ask every advisor I meet, usually related to something in my practice. For example, one time I would, in fact, I'm probably going to do it this year as well with the new Secure Act stuff. Hey, how are you handling Secure Act 2.0 in your office? Or how are you handling RMDs in your office? Or how are you handling QCDs in your office? And I'm going to ask every single advisor that question, not how should you do it or how do you want to do it? How are you doing it? And then eventually I'm going to get to somebody who has a system that I haven't figured out yet, right? So that's going to be so much better than, hey, what do you think about the sports team or the markets or interest rates or blah, 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 blah. Hey, how are you doing this in your practice?
You know, Jarvis, we actually use that. My son and I, Gabriel, are getting into archery. And so we've done a lot of compound archery recently. And that's one of the things is we're going to an archery event. I brought it up to him. I said, hey, so how are we going to meet new people? Because we didn't know anybody there. And he's like, well, I'm not sure. I was like, well, we have 2 options. One, we could take our normal stance, which is you and I stand in the corner and we just talk, which is fantastic. But we meet new people. Or we could come with one question that we want to ask every new person that we meet and try to engage in a conversation and learn something. Which one do you think was going to work better? He's like, well, the latter. Great. What question should that be, right? So this isn't just on the conference side. I was able to use it with Gabriel. Anytime we're in that environment, kind of set him up for success. So that's a great thing to do. All right, one more action item that's out there is your PD budget, your professional or personal development budget. That needs to be set out there. This is something you got to keep reselling on the home front, by the way, especially when your spouse comes up and sees you're spending a lot more money on yourself than she is on herself or however that's going to work out. That could be an issue. So you really need to talk about how the professional development budget is designed to grow the practice, how it helps the family, and be hyper intentional with those things. But you got to set that up. I take it off the gross. Whatever my gross is, every single time I pay it, I take X%, put it into a PD budget, and that's use or lose money to make sure we're investing in ourselves.
Or you can do Micah's strategy and get a friend like me who books these wild training events. We've got this mastermind where we're going to learn to race car. No, Micah, you're spot on, man. Like I said at the beginning of this episode, you and I added up what we respectively spent individually, and we do a lot of personal development together. And it is a staggering sum of money. And I don't mention that to brag about it, but just to show our focus on that. Even at this stage of the game, we're so focused on how do we up our ante that, again, multiples of 6 figures are being spent to keep that getting forward.
Oh, and there's people that spend way more than us, including one we know. He hires every single coach he meets, period. You know, he's not going to keep them forever, but no, every program, every coach, he hires them, gets through what he needs to, moves on to the next, et cetera. He's constantly developing, et cetera. So we are not alone in that. You need to join that club.
And by the way, he that multiple of his personal development budget is roughly the multiple of his income over ours. Like it's
That's a great
the
point.
ROI is right. It's his PD spend is multiples of ours, and his income is multiple. I think there's always this direct correlation. I've almost never seen it the other way.
Awesome. Jarvis, this is great. Action items are always the key part of this. Make sure you take this, make sure you implement, and until next time, use that value sledgehammer. Happy planning.
Hammer of Thor. Value hammer of Thor. Happy planning.
Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice.